Mike, you spent over 26 years on the sidelines and in the locker rooms, training rooms of the NFL, which is probably more than most players and coaches. And you've been an analyst for NBC Sunday Night Football. So everyone wants to know, let's get your take on or your reactions to last night's game.
Obviously, a big surprise in the score. I thought it was a very entertaining game because I kept kind of waiting for, Mahomes and the offensive machine to kind of take over, and it never really did. So I thought from a strategical point of view, from a little bit of the drama, and really an amazing story of what Tom Brady has done throughout his career, and to kind of capitalize on it last night, I think it was amazing. So I thought it was a very entertaining game, and obviously, like many, was very surprised by the score, especially the domination by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
So you brought Mahomes, and I think everyone agrees that guy's got a really, really bright future and will probably be playing for a long time. But if you compare him to Russell Wilson, okay, so their first years as starters, right, they both lost in the playoffs. Their second years as starters, they both won the Super Bowl. And their third years as starters, they both lost to a Tom Brady-led football team. So I just thought that was
amazing,
crazy.
Amazing. Right? And two very comparable players, the way they play and their leadership skills, their mobility, their game magistry, if you will, of how they kind of make things happen. Might be an interesting parallel how that those two careers end up shaping up.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of mobile, I read today that Mahomes ran, now not rushed for positive yards. He ran for like 500 yards because I felt like the Tampa Bay defense was like dry humping him up and down the field like all night, man. He couldn't get away from them, right? Like, you think that was the key to the game there?
That was a big part of it. And again, the interesting part about that stat, it was I think 497 yards. That was him rushing before he either threw or got sacked. Yeah. That didn't include positive yards. So that was over 500, almost 500 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And you get thrown that interesting twist that he's suffering from a turf toe injury on his left foot. So he's doing that kind of mobility, and that's the most in the entire 2020 season. The only one who was even close was Mahomes himself. I think it was Week 10 against the Raiders. So
man,
that's running for his life, and obviously made it interesting. And again, playing on a turf toe just shows how amazing that player is.
That's in your wheelhouse, and I wanted to ask you about this kind of injury related. You hear the term turf toe, and it kind of sounds almost like comical, right? And you hear about guys not being able to play with it. You're like, what's it, a hangnail? So what exactly is turf toe, and why is it such a nagging, lingering injury?
And it's true, but the only ones that say it's kind of a comical injury are the ones that have not suffered from it. Because like I was saying, any of the older crowd that can remember linebacker Jack Lambert, who played for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the Steel Curtain, one of the biggest, nastiest, toughest players ever to play the league, turf toe forced him into retirement. So anybody says turf toe is not a big deal, I tell them to look up Jack Lambert, and that kind of says it all. But what turf toe is a sprain of the ball of the foot, so to speak, which is the base joint at the base of the big toe. So it's almost where the big toe, which is the big force where you're pushing off the last thing that leaves the ground when you run and change direction, where that big toe meets the foot. So it's a really important area. There's some crazy mechanics that take place there. And the forces are extremely high, especially someone who's changing direction like Mahomes would do. And there's even rumors that he may need surgery in the offseason. He's going to see a foot specialist to kind of get that consulted with, may need a surgery. People kind of saying that. I always say when it comes to surgery and big toes, you got to really pump the brakes, because surgery, you get down in there, it's very complicated. So I think right now they probably don't have that answer, but it just shows the severity of this injury. It took place in the divisional round against the Browns. So something that he's had for 3 weeks and played 2 games, including last night's Super Bowl.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I believe it was like one of the earlier drives that Kansas City had. He pulled it down and ran a couple times for first downs, and he was getting positive yards, and it didn't look like it was bothering him. It was only, I think, in the latter part, of the game, and I don't know if that's just from being sacked a few times or maybe overusing it, that you could tell he was kind of limping a little bit on it.
Exactly, and he is wearing a customized orthotic that has a carbon fiber shank that basically extends under that big toe, so it limits how much that toe extends back. It's a way of protecting that joint. Rick Burkholder, their head athletic trainer and a good friend of mine, does a great job with those injuries. So that was protecting him. But I too saw the same thing in the second half. And a lot of times with a Super Bowl is the only game of the season that you have an extended halftime, because usually it's only 12 minutes for halftime. A lot of times that longer halftime, you get stiffer, you're sitting around a lot more, you're thrown out of your routine. So a lot of times those little nagging injuries you want to keep loose, those long halftimes at a Super Bowl, so they can get the entertaining shows in, so to speak.
Sure. Which wasn't very entertaining at all. Yeah. I didn't personally enjoy the halftime show. I thought it was
great.
You know,
yeah. I didn't realize how many songs The Weeknd had. I thought he only had like one or two, and I was like, "Oh, I know the song. Yeah. Okay, this is good."
I like the music. I thought they could have done a little bit better with like the sound of the quality wasn't very good.
Yeah, I was knowing the broadcast side of it, and I'm always kind of listening to the truck, as we say, where they're doing all this stuff. I was telling my wife, I said, "Boy, I bet those producers are in there screaming, get me some more audio," because the quality for what he was doing wasn't really strong. And I agree. I wish I could have heard him a little louder.
Yeah.
Is it too early? Is it too early to ask for some predictions? Because last time you were on the show, you made a couple predictions about 2020, and I got to say, you split them right down the middle, 50-50, and so I'll remind you of those, okay? And what I said, we were kind of, I think, on the because you being a New Englander, right, born and raised in Connecticut.
Yes.
And we were on the subject of kind of the Patriot way a little bit, and Belichick, and I said, are they going to be okay in New England? You get Patriots will be fine. Okay, so you missed that one. Yes. I think at least for this year, right? We kind of missed that one. There's some injuries there with Newton, which you can never know. Then I said, what about Brady in Tampa? He said he's got weapons around him. I think he's going to be just fine. So I think you really kind of like you maybe you shot that one a little low, because I think just fine. He's doing great for all intents and purposes.
It's Super Bowl ring number 7. That's fine for him. It's okay.
Yeah. Too early for next year, though. What does this tell us anything about what next year will look like?
It's interesting. I love the fact that right up on the stage, Brady came out and said, I'll be back next year. So put that concern aside, the rumor mill, this night. He's coming back. He's the GOAT. There's no reason physically or mentally or financially he has any reason to do anything differently. So that's great to see. But there's going to be some interesting landscape changes with this quarterback scenario. You see what's going on with Deshaun Watson down in Houston, and Aaron Rodgers is kind of whispering he's not really happy. So it's Carson Wentz. Is he traded, not traded? So there's going to be a fair amount of moving around. There's some concern now with the combine. May not be the normal combine like we've had in the past, which obviously we did not have the second combine because of the COVID last year. They did have the first one, but there's a lot there. So there's so many variables to change. Right now it's too early to say. And with anytime you get new head coaches in a lot of the cities, like we saw the NFL teams, they're always going to want to put their mark on it. They're always going to try to make some impacts. And I think one thing that I saw is that Tom Brady went into Tampa Bay, said, I want this, I want that. He brought Gronk out of retirement. Antonio Brown, they found a way to get him in to contribute. Had some good people when he got there. They brought Byron Leftwich in to kind of be the offensive coordinator for him, who's here at quarterback in Jacksonville. So the thing that it showed me there is kind of like a lot of NBA teams where they bring guys in and they kind of orchestrate and build what they want. You might start to see a lot of these quarterbacks and coaches want to say, I can build this super team and do some more things compared to, do I want to wait on the draft kind of thing? So I think it creates a lot more flexibility in what players want to do and kind of create that winning now compared to let's drag it out for the future. So I think it makes free agency more interesting. It makes the draft more interesting. And it makes trades, which aren't really big in the NFL compared to other leagues, may become a bigger plan and a bigger option that teams may do stuff to gamble now to win. Because let's face it, if you don't win in a very short period of time, NFL stands for not for long.
So Mike, what you spoke about Byron Leftwich briefly, and you being a head trainer of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Was he here when you were trainer in Jacksonville? And so him as a coach, is he using a lot of the, just that quarterback mentality, or as an offensive coordinator? What do you think about him as a coordinator versus a player?
I think he does a great job, and I am not surprised to see him as a coach. So when he was here, he's a really smart guy. He knows the X's and O's, and he's one of those guys that kind of either they get it or they don't. And as a quarterback, and he got it. So, and we left him. Remember, he went to Pittsburgh, and he had some good years up there. And he's always been a guy that can really kind of put things together and think from a higher perspective as think from ground level. And I think he's a perfect combination, knowing his personality of how he would work with Tom Brady. So I'm not surprised with his success. Coach Arians is a guy who kind of gives his coaches a lot of leeway to do what they do well. So I think it's a perfect blend of Coach Arians, Byron, who's good at what he does, sees things both from a quarterback and a coach perspective, and obviously the GOAT to work with is a great three-headed monster.
Well, another ex-Jaguar, Leonard Fournette down there in Tampa Bay. What did you think about his performance? I mean, he was always a baller up here in Jacksonville and just a hard-hitting running back. But that performance last night I thought was pretty incredible on his part as well.
It really was. And everybody down there really loves him. And he came in, he said some really admirable things about Tom Brady, that Tom's been kind of like a father to him. And Tom realizes the value of having a great, strong running back, which he had a handful of them in New England, but didn't have a lot of them. If you think about it, he had LeBlunt was with him for a while, and Sony Michel, and a lot of different players, but he never really had that big back that could do the kind of things that Fournette can do. And it's interesting talking to a lot of people in Jacksonville here over the last week. The general consensus was we want Tom Brady to have a great game and want Tampa to win, but we don't want Fournette to have a good game, because there was some concern about, hey, because let's face it, Jags cut him, and he went out there and he's on the street, and Tampa picked him up. So there's a little bit of that animosity because he didn't really produce here like they really wanted him to, but he was a player who was always tough, and had a great game. Like I said,
interesting that Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, and Leonard Fournette joined that organization when Tom Brady did basically this year, and they all just scored. They have a great organization, right? But I mean, interesting that those guys were the ones that scored. You mentioned, I remember, and I love seeing Byron Leftwich do well, because I remember that guy when he was at Marshall, and I think they were playing a game, and it may have been a bowl game, but he was so banged up that he was having his offensive linemen like hobble with them on like a hurry up offense.
They were carrying him down the field.
Yeah, they were carrying him down the field, and I was like, "Wow!" I just remember ever since that point, I was like, "Wow, that guy's like he's a competitor. He's a competitor."
Really
to see him get to do it, coaching, and then coaching with the talent he has. It's been really cool, and I love your comment about do we see the NFL start to do kind of things like the Lakers have done? Hey, we're going to get a couple two, three core really good players, and then we're going to leave it up to the front office to kind of fill in the gaps. And we're going to do that. It's not all going to be through the draft. It's going to be through free agency trades.
Sure.
It'll be fascinating. It'll be interesting. Way too early predictions. Who do you think we're going to kind of see in the discussion, right, for next year in the NFL?
You're going to see Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo, Josh Allen, I'm a big fan of him with what he's done, what they put around a very fast defense, their offense, their running backs. They kind of narrowed down to Singletary at the end of the year, but they have two great running backs that really put a lot into it. So that's an exciting. We had a playoff game up there, and that's an exciting city that they love their football. There's not a lot else up there, so they love what they have. But I think Buffalo's going to be in the equation. Anytime Russell Wilson, like you mentioned earlier, Seattle's going to be in the run with what you're going to see there. A lot of like up and coming teams. Arizona had some flashes like we saw with Kyler Murray, but he's such a great player, and Coach Kingsbury brings a lot of dynamic component to their offense. So I think they're a team that you can't really sleep on. San Francisco, what are they going to do with Jimmy Garoppolo? So there's a lot of questions. Tua in Miami, Tua Tagovailoa, how's he going to play out? So I think it's really exciting. And I think one thing the NFL came through, had a really tough year with the COVID. I can't say enough about the medical staffs, the athletic trainers, the doctors, Dr. Alan Sills, the chief medical officer for the NFL, how they put that together and really got through this whole season. A couple of reschedules, but for the most part, did a phenomenal job. And I think that's a tribute to everyone, from the players to the coaches to the management to the medical staffs, to getting on the same page, testing every single day. So that alone, they got through it with a kind of a crazy season, but it really makes me very optimistic for next year of some really exciting football. When you kind of wash all the COVID stuff out of it, hopefully that's a thing of the past once September rolls around, knock on wood. It could be a really exciting season with some great ratings and some great football we're all excited for.
I mean, we were, you were on last time, I think it was like August or September, and we were having the discussion was, are we going to have football?
Exactly.
You're like, I think we're going to, but it had that decision. So to see it kind of come through, and I can only imagine what a pain a lot of this was from a lot of different perspectives, right? I mean, not only just the health thing, but just the kind of operational like pain of producing an NFL game, like actually putting that event on, right, week in and week out. When you're reflecting back on this year, are there a couple of things? Are there any injuries that you're like, ooh, that was like a really, really gnarly one? And the flip side of that, are there any plays that stick out in your mind that you're like, wow, that was an awesome play in 2020?
As far as injuries, it was one from the past when you looked at Alex Smith. You saw they came out and did a lot of the publicity of that, and his story is an amazing one. Obviously, made NFL Comeback Player of the Year this year. Ran away with that one based on what he went through with literally almost lost his leg, literally almost lost his life with an infection, and to come back and play was an amazing story. So seeing those kind of things, the graphic nature of those injuries, and I've seen the pictures and a lot of the details of what's there, and it's gruesome from a general perspective, from a medical component of what he did and what the medical staff had to do. it's an amazing success story. Some of the plays that really stand out. We had a game, a Sunday night game in Seattle I want to say it was week 5. And some of the plays that Russell Wilson made and some of the throws that he had, it was amazing. Him and Metcalf's chemistry was some of the things he does that moon throw where it kind of drops over the shoulder was amazing. Yeah. Early in the year, some of the things, the offense for Pittsburgh, what they were able to do with that high-flying, quick-throwing offense, the numbers they put were amazing. So I think there's just so many plays to pick from. It's really hard to say, but those are the ones that really stand out for me.
I had written down right here, and I'm not sure if it was a Sunday night game, but it was Seattle. It may have been Arizona, and I think it was a pick. And DK Metcalf ran down the cornerback from like I don't even know how far.
He was at the goal line. That was our game.
The goal line.
And I was on that sideline. I was on that same sideline. So the Arizona, and it was in Arizona. So the pick took place on the end zone to my right. He picked it off. It was I think it was Budda Baker. Picked it off at about the 10-yard line. And he took off down the sideline. I quickly looked to Russell Wilson to see if he was going to get him, and he didn't stand a prayer. And I saw something. I looked back and I saw Metcalf, and he did something that was amazing. And just from a mindset perspective, he didn't run towards Budda Baker. He ran where Budda Baker was going to be. So he started coming down between the hash marks and closer to the numbers, and he just missed all the traffic and kept coming. And I'm watching it right in front of me unfold. And you knew he didn't stand a prayer in hell that he was going to get caught. But the athleticism, I'm sure you guys have seen the replay of him turning it on and taking off and making up probably 15 yards in about 80 yards to make that tackle it was impressive, not only from the athleticism, but just determination. I mean, young kids go back and look at that play and say, never, ever give up on a play.
Mm-hmm. That was amazing. Do you think he foam rolled after that, Mike?
Oh, of course. Oh, he had
awesome.
Well, he did before. That's why he was able to run so fast.
You've been around. Yeah, go ahead.
Speaking of foam rolling, Mike, your new book, Foam Rollers for Dummies, is out on Amazon, right?
It is. I'm very excited about it.